We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark. Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 55 or close, with a goal to help us all live our happiest, most fulfilling, and productive lives now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved, and we need to get going now. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Jeanne Andrus, a woman whose work I greatly admire. Jeanne Andrus, the Menopause Guru. Jeanne has been coaching, writing, and speaking about menopause for over a decade. She's the author of the internationally best-selling I Just Want to Be Me Again, and the host of the podcast and the TV show Menopause Matters. Her approach to resolving menopause symptoms is wildly esoteric, rooted in her own blend of coaching, known as Menopause Mastery Coaching, bolstered by hypnotherapy, Reiki, yogic breathwork, and a love for science and anthropology. Welcome, Jeanne. I'm so happy you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. And thinking about what you're doing and how long you've been doing it, you started doing this a long time before it got popular to do so. Much more talked about now than it was, but when you started, it wasn't. How did that happen?
Well, my own journey through menopause was particularly, I won't say it was like overwhelmingly symptomatic, but the symptoms that I did have were anger, depression, and low libido. And you can guess that wasn't terribly compatible with my marriage at the time. And so when my marriage collapsed and I moved 1,800 miles away to be with my mom in her last years, I had a decision to make. I could let that whole thing tear me apart, or I could let it be the springboard to the best possible life I could live. And I decided to do that. And in doing so, I got healthy, I got happy, and I started pursuing this knowledge of what was going on with me. And I had an opportunity to step away from my life as a corporate drudge, start over as a personal trainer and health coach. And when I did so, I learned that all of my clients who were on their menopause journeys from early to mid 40s on through their 60s and beyond were experiencing or had experienced the same kinds of disconnect with their lives that had happened to me. And some of them knew what was going on, and some of them were like me and just sort of blindsided by the whole thing. And so as I went through it, I made the decision to shift my practice from, simple personal training and running coaching and that kind of thing into something that would really make a difference in the way we experienced menopause. Menopause was very much a taboo. I had two doctors, two gynecologists who examined me and were obviously aware that I was in perimenopause and never said the word to me. And so I lived in ignorance of this major change that was going on. I guess I thought menopause was something that happened to older women. I was only 48, for goodness sakes, I was still young. And so I was like completely blindsided by learning that that's what was going on for me, and that I was needing to deal with my body and my heart and my mind and my spirit and my relationships in a whole different way. It started when I was like in my early 50s. And as I went on, it was just more and more diving down the rabbit holes of the internet to research various topics and realize that what we say about it and what we knew about it back then was nowhere near the full story.
You almost wonder if those two gynecologists knew what was going on for you.
Well, one of them sort of side offered me hormone replacement therapy, so I think he probably did. And the other one actually did an FSH test and said, no, you're not there yet. But that's the way she said it. She said, you're not there yet. You're still fertile. And it was about adding birth control because having left my relationship with my husband, I was now in a new relationship that she wanted me to make sure that I wasn't going to get pregnant. But she didn't really say that, nor did she really even ask too much about how my periods were going, because they were pretty regular. And I actually didn't finish going through menopause to the 1 year period free point until I was about 57. So it was really kind of fascinating that nobody said this. Nobody said the words.
You can still be having periods and be in perimenopause.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not just because you're still fertile doesn't mean you're not in
Not in
perimenopause. What a stupid thing to say.
Exactly. But I think she was saying, you aren't there to the point where you don't need birth control. And to me, that meant, oh, well, I guess I'm not menopausal yet. And since nobody had sat down and explained to me that perimenopause begins when you start with the first symptoms, the first anovulatory periods, which could be completely symptom free, and that it could go on for a decade. I mean, back then there was a little point in time, maybe 6-7 years ago. COVID has completely messed with my sense of time, but where there was article after article after article saying perimenopause can last a decade or more. Before then, it was really that year, maybe a year and a half before you started losing your periods, that they thought was perimenopause. So when I went through it some 20 years ago, they weren't saying the words. And it wasn't until I looked back and realized that it actually happened for me in my mid 40s. I remember, I have this vague memory of it being at around 43 when my seasonal allergies changed, which is a symptom that a lot of people don't realize, is that because our hormones change, women's allergies change at the big hormonal changes of their lives, at puberty, when they get pregnant, when they deliver, when they stop nursing, and then again at menopause. So we have these times in our lives where seasonal allergies or food allergies change significantly. And it's a real signal that your body's hormones are changing.
That is amazing, Jeanne. I mean, I'm sitting here just amazed, just amazed, just amazed. I mean, I went through perimenopause over 20 years, way over 20 years ago now. And I don't know that we had the word then. I certainly did hear it. I heard the word menopause. But I never heard that word. And so nobody, I don't know if doctors knew, but nobody I knew anything about perimenopause. I mean, you started into menopause was all we knew. I mean, a friend told me when I was describing how I was feeling, she said, I think you're starting menopause. And it was a long time until I stopped having periods. So it was obviously perimenopause, but no doctor, no healthcare worker of any kind said that to me. Oh, but something else you just said amazed me. Oh, I never heard to this day. This right now is the first time I ever heard that, and it's so obvious, but that our hormonal changes can change our allergies. Nobody knows that. Do women coming to you know that? I didn't know
No.
that, and I've had several people on my podcast who deal with menopause, and I still have never heard that.
Yeah, there are literally my book, I Just Want to Be Me Again. In the first edition, I did not incorporate a quote symptom list, and I did in the second edition. Everyone, not everyone, that's an exaggeration, but there's a site out there for one of the over-the-counter menopause potions, which has a site called 34 Symptoms, and they list 34 of the most obvious symptoms of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. My book lists over 100. But we have this notion, because of this website and the prevalence of this website and the linking of this website and the way the internet works, that 34 is the definitive list of the changes that can be attributed to menopause. But the truth is that estrogen and progesterone, we have receptors for those two hormones in every cell of our bodies. Progesterone, a few less, but estrogen is taken in and used by every cell in our bodies, every brain cell, every organ, every bone cell, every blood cell. All of them are capable of absorbing estrogen. In addition, all of our major hormones in our body interact with estrogen and progesterone. So insulin and thyroid and testosterone and cortisol and serotonin and dopamine and all the rest of them, and probably a lot that we don't know about because they're just coming, they're just starting to be studied. Things like ghrelin and leptin that affect our appetite and how we use energy. But they all have interactions, and they either work in cortisol's case. Cortisol hits us more strongly without estrogen, whereas the rest of them don't seem to work as well without estrogen. So we have all of these interactions and all of these systems that are being affected. And when you say it's 34 symptoms, it's just really ludicrous because there's so many more ways. And I keep discovering them as somebody says to me, this is happening to me. And so I go dig through some research, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's something that maybe we didn't consider before. This weekend, someone asked me, why do we get so much belly fat? And the descriptive reason is that we get fat, that visceral fat around our organs, that then pushes the subcutaneous fat out into that meno belly that they call it. And so that's a scientific description, but nobody's till just recently has gone out and said, is this a difference in the way estrogen works? Because unless you're very heavy prior to menopause, you don't get that buildup of visceral fat, which is dangerous, by the way. That's the one that slows down your organs and makes heart disease more of a danger and causes inflammation. But now their research is finding that, yes, there's actually a difference in the way our bodies store fat and wants to put it in that visceral fat, so that even women who are slender at their appropriate weight, whatever you want to say, get that visceral fat underneath, and then the subcutaneous fat on top of that.
How do we get rid of that?
How do you get rid of it? Well, that's the other problem, is that they haven't really studied a good way to get rid of that without getting rid of the subcutaneous, dropping down the subcutaneous fat as well. So it's both balancing your hormones, so taking care of your hormonal balance to the best of your ability with, and I have a thing about hormonal replacement therapy, because frankly, I think that we have a gift in menopause. So this gift is short-circuited when we go back into the premenopausal levels of estrogen and progesterone. So it's a matter of balancing your hormones, maximizing the effectiveness of your hormones, bringing down cortisol, raising up your body's ability to use thyroid, getting insulin working correctly, and then going into not a caloric deficit, because we've learned that calories in, calories out is not what it is, but it is an energy deficit. It is using more energy than you take in every day in your food, so that you begin to lose weight, and you lose weight slowly and effectively, and sooner or later that visceral fat is not the problem anymore. The problem is you're spending every weekend at a running event or whatever it is.
How does one balance her hormones without HRT?
Okay, so here's
or does it vary by person?
It does vary by person. It varies by what's going on in your life and what you're doing. But insulin resistance, for example, is taken care of by limiting the simple carbs that you take in, sugars and grains in particular, potatoes to a lesser extent, but French fries are not. And I have a French fry addiction, so this is non-judge.
I suppose one shouldn't have a big bag of chips for dinner.
Yeah. And the bag of chips followed by ice cream for dessert is definitely a no-no. But so, for example, insulin resistance, you deal with the sugar coming in, and then you use the sugar that's already in your muscles and in your bloodstream by using your body, exercising, being active. And when I say exercise, I don't mean necessarily going to jazzercise, or I don't mean lifting weights, although you need to do some strength work. And I don't necessarily mean running a marathon. I mean what works for you, what makes you happy, what lights you up, and sleeping better. So my clients all learn to sleep better, because bad sleep affects 90% of us or more during at least one period of our menopausal journey, often for months at a time, which can, it destroys your health, it destroys your happiness, it destroys your relationships, your job, everything. So I work a lot with sleep. Stress, we have to bring stress down, because we weren't designed for modern day stress. We certainly weren't designed to drive on freeways.
No. So if anybody's listening now, and if they have difficulty, say, with sleep, that's probably also an individual thing. But is there anything that you say to a lot of your women that you work with?
I almost always start everybody with breathing better. And that means that for 3 or 4 minutes of the day, better if you can do it 3 to 5 times a day, breathe deeply. Make sure you're loose, or your clothes are loose around your belly and around your hips, so that you can take air in all the way down into your diaphragm, and then let it all the way out very, very slowly. So the rhythm that I use is 4-8 breathing, where you inhale for 4 and exhale for 8. Sometimes you're inhaling for 4 and you try and exhale for 8 and it doesn't work. It's because you haven't slowed down enough. So start with 4, 4, 4, 5, 4, 6, 4, 7, 4, 8, and then stay at that 4, 8 for 3 to 5 minutes and just relax. This is going to change your relationship with your body. It's going to
Why do
change
we
your
hold our breath? Because I
why
find all of a sudden I will find that I am just holding my breath. And I've done actually a lot of breath work with meditation and yoga, and still I find myself holding my breath.
I don't know why we hold our breath. Now you've got me on another little rabbit hole that I'll be down this afternoon. It's not healthy. So, one place you see it is in weightlifters who will hold their breath as they jerk up the weights. And that's actually really super dangerous. It's called the Valsalva maneuver. Yes, I was a personal trainer. And it's actually really unhealthy and can increase blood pressure and increase heart rate. And I'm assuming that that's what that's up there to do, is to increase and get you ready for fight or flight. So is that shallow breathing that happens when you're tense or scared, where you breathe really quickly. When we're breathing quickly, we are telling our body, we are telling our vagal nerve, which runs down the center of our body, that we are in fight, flight, or freeze mode. It's triggering what's called the sympathetic nervous system. When we breathe deeply, it's actually massaging that vagal nerve, and this brings us right into the parasympathetic nerve response, which is to rest and to relax and to digest. So if you're all that up in the top of the chest, your body actually stops digesting food, which is why you sometimes feel like your dinner is sitting there like a rock. Yeah.
Well, and it is. I mean,
Yeah, it is, because it's got nothing's working on it.
Switching gears a little bit, John. Are you? I understand you have a story about Snow White. And terms of messages you get about society's view of older women. You deal with that kind of thing all the time. And so you are sort of swimming in it.
So here's when I realized how society has viewed, especially Western society. This is not so much true of Eastern society or of Native American culture. But I was 3. It was the first time I went to a movie. We only had black and white TV. Nobody had color back then. And it was the first time when those curtains closed after the shorts and they reopened. It was the first time I saw a movie in color. And there was this beautiful princess dancing around the forest with her little furry friends. And it was so wonderful. And the scene changed. And you saw this regal, beautiful older woman. And she stands in her hall and she speaks to her mirror and she says, "Mirror on the wall, the fairest of us all." And obviously she's expecting a certain response. But the mirror says to her, "You, my queen, have a beauty quite rare. But little Snow White is 1,000 times more fair." The queen flies into a rage. She runs to her laboratory. She mixes up a potion and she puts it in the apples. And then she mixes up a second potion. And she drinks it down and she turns immediately into a hag. This is the vision of menopause that Disney and the Grimm brothers gave us over and over and over again. In Cinderella, in Sleeping Beauty, in The Little Mermaid, in Brave, in Tangled, not Disney, but Hansel and Gretel. And all of these stories tell us one thing, that as we age, we turn into hags and we lose our minds in the jealousy of these younger, beautiful princesses. That's the way we view menopause. That's the way we view older women. And if you look at politics, it's kind of interesting the last few years in politics, as we've watched women who are strong and determined and have great ideas and great leadership come forward time after time after time and get beaten down for it and by it. So you saw it with Hillary. You saw it with Michelle Obama, although they added an element to that we shall not talk about today. We see it with Kamala Harris. We see it with Amy Klobuchar. We see it with others. And yet we look at a couple of people, and we look at the one that comes to mind is Kirsten Gillibrand, who was a senator from New York. I don't know if she still is in the Senate. I don't see much from her, but she's a little bit on the younger side. She's blonde. She's a little bit younger looking. And so she didn't get this pushback from males and male politicians that many of these other women have had. As we go through menopause, as we hit menopause, estrogen has been telling us to be people pleasers. It's been telling us to live in community, to live in tribes so that we can raise our children safely. Think about going back to a tribal world, a hunter-gatherer world. It was nearly impossible for a woman by herself to raise a child, feed a child, and have a child that goes forward into adulthood safely. Valley of the Horses, notwithstanding, was total fiction. It is not something that could have happened. I remember reading that back many years ago and thinking, this is not realistic. And then my studies in anthropology have told me it's totally ridiculous. And so we learned to go along, to get along. We learned to build a tribe around us or to fit into the tribe that was there so that we didn't get kicked off the island and we didn't get thrown out. And so we had a place to raise our children. Well, what happens is that that's all connected to estrogen. Remember, I said estrogen goes everywhere in our bodies. So it goes to in places in our brains that say connection, connection, connection. And the way we've interpreted that is people pleasing. So we hit 43. I don't know why. It just feels like it's always 43. It could be a little on one side or the other. And we go out and we all of a sudden we wake up one morning and we say, been people pleasing for 43 years of my life and I'm over it. I'm not going to do it anymore. And they think, a lot of them think that this is like this brilliant revelation, but it's really our bodies talking to us and saying, hey, you don't need to do that anymore. You can be who you want to be. And remember, I said menopause has a gift. That is the gift. It's the gift of ourselves. It's the gift of taking ourselves from the outskirts of our own life and putting ourselves into the middle and getting to decide how we want to be in relationship to everybody else and every other priority in our lives. We can choose ourselves. And it's a gift.
It is a gift. And I think I have seen it without any knowledge of what you just said. I have seen it over and over and over with women I work with. And it's in their late 40s, early 50s, and they're chomping to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea it was actually physiologically based. I mean, I think some of it right now I do believe that we've got a long way to go, but I think everything for women, older women, is changing. I really do believe. I mean, I just started Prime Spark 3 years ago, and even in that time, I have seen so many now books and papers written about the value of older women and how we have to get into our own and how we have to step out and, da, 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 da. And so I do believe that some of it is in society.
We've definitely made a shift and said, oh, yeah, you get to do that. Okay. And some of it is men opening up and allowing that to happen. But the drive comes, as I said, biologically from us, from this shift in how we perceive the world.
Interesting.
And I mean, I can't show you the research on it because nobody's done the research, and nobody's certainly, it's very difficult to do that kind of anthropological research. But what I see over and over and over is this real opening up and awakening to who we as individuals want to be in the world. And it's amazing. There's just so much power there.
Yeah.
And which means, yeah.
So, Jeanne, we don't have much time left, but tell me, we can the time we have. What's next? You have done so much. Is there anything that you're dreaming that is still on the plate?
So there's some things that yes, I want out of my own life. I was the horse kid, and I want the horse. I want to travel. I have grandkids I adore. I don't want to be their other grandmother is marvelous in that she loves just being with them and doing stuff with them. I like popping in as Grammy and popping back out. They're 1,800 miles away from me. And so there's a lot of personal things I still want to do. But there's still a couple of books in me. There's a fiction book.
Oh, fun.
Totally separate from my work. It's actually a coming of age novel. And so there's a lot of stuff, yes, I'd love to do. Things that, as I say to most people, come on down and visit me for Mardi Gras. I'm here and having a blast during Mardi Gras. Yeah.
So I could imagine, Jeanne, that there are people who desperately want to get in touch with you at this point. How can they do that if they want to do that?
So my website is menopause.guru. So menopause spelled correctly, guru spelled Guru. And there is a contact page there. You can email me at Jeanne, JEANNE at menopause.guru. It's the French pronunciation that I use. It's the French spelling, but it's not obvious from the way you say it, how to spell it. And I'd love to talk with anyone who is going through a lot and needs some help getting through those symptoms, or just wants to talk more about how this change really brings you into your own.
And one of the things we didn't have time to talk about today, but I would love to talk to you another time about is, so we've talked a lot about perimenopause, and I think there is more now written and known about perimenopause, and thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
I don't see that same amount written about postmenopause. That we will talk about another time.
I would love to come back and talk about postmenopause because it is, again, we don't know what we don't know about it and making it normal and acceptable and open to women is just so hugely important.
Right.
Thank you for having this space to have those conversations, Sarah.
Yeah,
It's
thank
wonderful.
you. Yeah, so as I said, that's pretty much our time today. Please join us again. You can find our Prime Spark podcast on every popular outlet. Find out more about Prime Spark at primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guest, Jeanne Andrus. And don't forget, you can find her at menopause.guru. Is that correct?
Yes, that is.
Okay, menopause.guru. Thank you for being with us. Spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com, and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark, to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.